Hi, Jim Ziegler, the Alpha Dog, and I got one tremendous show for you today. I've got some of the premier celebrities in the car business on the panel today. And we also have Geno Walsh. Yeah. Oh God. Today we're going to talk about electric cars. I mean, the manufacturers have pushed all the chips into the center. The government has pushed all the chips into the center. We're going to be totally electric production by 2030. In Europe, they've even legislated it. Oh my God. Everybody is crazy about electric cars. And we're gonna be spending a little time talking about the feasibility, the myth, the reality. Let's start out introducing the panel. Today we have one of the biggest dealers in Louisiana, if not the biggest dealer in Louisiana. Multiple dealers in multiple states. Matt Bowers. Hey, big guy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Jen.
Oh, thanks for being here. I mean, uh, you had an article on LinkedIn that sort of inspired me to say, hey, electric cars, that's a great subject for the next Dawg Pound issue. And directly from Spain, the mad Russian himself, the king of reinsurance, Max Zanan. Hey, big guy.
Hey, Jim, nice to be back. I skipped the last 2 weeks, and I'm gonna kick some ass today.
Oh, you got it all lined up.
I'm electric ass,
Okay. And the National Operations Director for the Qvale Organization, high import penetration, my good friend Geno Walsh. Hey, big guy.
How are we doing today? Thanks for letting me be part of this Make-A-Wish Foundation. I always wanted to be on the Alpha Dog show, and I really do appreciate it.
What can I say? I'm glad you're here. And one of the most brilliant women in the car business. I'm talking about this woman has held every executive position in the car business. And look who we have backstage there. Oh my gosh. April showed up. Hey, kid. And two of the most brilliant women in the car business, Jennifer Briggs. Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, Jim. How are you?
Well, as you can see, I'm full of it today. Which,
well, I'm glad to be here to witness you're full of it. And I know some folks know I've been dealing with some health issues, and so I'm glad to have enough energy today to get on here and argue with Max.
Well, no, yeah. and the marketing director for the Horn Automotive Group, April Simmons. Hey, April, you flew in right under the radar screen. How you doing?
Like I'm coming in hot today. I'm just going to slide in under the radar, but couldn't miss this show. It's exciting to topic.
Oh, I'll tell you what, we got a pretty good audience lined up. Okay, Bobbie's sitting on the sidelines. Couldn't. Okay, all right. Let's see. Okay, we got. Okay, we got the audience is starting to build up here. The regular instigators on the sidelines. Matt Bowers. I read that post you made on LinkedIn, and tell us the general theme of the post you made that had all that response.
Sure. I live in Metro New Orleans, on the North Shore of New Orleans, and on Saturday, I generally go see some of the car dealerships in person, and I drove from my home to the South Shore of New Orleans, over to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and then back to my house again, which is, about a 3-hour journey. And part of my purpose to do it while I'm on the road, I decided about right outside of my neighborhood that I was going to count the amount of electric vehicles that I noticed on the road. Because I see it on the news. I see a lot of the mandates and progressive things that are being spoken of. So I decided to count them. And I mean, there's a chance that I could have missed a couple, but I saw one on that Saturday. And that's a pretty expansive piece of ground. And so I went to LinkedIn and said, hey, look, this is the route I took. I was paying attention. I saw one. I saw more 1-ton trucks pulling horses, in fact, by a 10 factor than I did electric cars. And the electric car I saw, ironically, was in front of a petroleum refinery.
Now, do you think that was part of the Louisiana demographic, or do you think that would apply to other regions?
You know, I think the problem and the quandary with talking, and which makes this country great, is that Amarillo, Texas, Fremont, California, and South Louisiana are all in the same union. And if you go to any of those locations, some places will serve sweet tea and barbecue, some won't. I think it's a very regional thing. And I think the infrastructure and the circumstances here make it difficult. You know, this is a place that last year at Hurricane Ida, we evacuated, plus or minus 500,000 people in 48 hours. So how does that look? I didn't have power to run a refrigerator for 7 days at my home. And I think it's, hey Wayne, I think it's a very regional thing. So I don't know if it's so much the demographics. I'll wrap my point on this. So after I wrote that post, I had a friend of mine call me and said, I have an electric car and he lives near me in my neighborhood. And I said, well, didn't you buy a Tahoe from me last year? He says, yes. Did you trade it in? He says, no. I said, why do you have the Tahoe? He's like, in case I have to go somewhere with my family. I'm like, all right, so what you have you have a pet tiger in your garage, but if your life depended on it, you wouldn't take it out of state to evacuate your family. Basically, yes.
So you're saying that he said, implied that the electric car is not dependable.
He wasn't willing to take it to Florida to evacuate for a hurricane. So, and he's got money too, right?
Electric cars, Geno.
Well, I was listening to him talk about barbecue. The one thing that's different in California than it is in Louisiana is they don't have brisket in California. They got tri-tip. And
yeah, I was gonna say, and then it gets really complex with a vinegar-based sauce or sweet. Like it's complex.
Yeah, it is complex. Well,
let's try to stay on electric cars. We only have an hour.
Consumer needs. Here you go, Geno. I got you back.
It's lunchtime somewhere, but I was thinking about it because we had stores in Texas, California, and in Florida, and I think regionally it is accepted. The penetration in Livermore, California for Tesla was 34%. 34%. In South Florida, there's a much higher penetration for EV vehicles, but in Midland, Texas, there was not a very high penetration for EV vehicles, right?
So it is demographic. I said that on Matt's post the other day that I believe. See, I live in a gated country club community, and there are $7-8 million homes in my neighborhood. I don't live in one of those.
Well,
I live on the other end of the neighborhood.
Here's the one thing I can tell you. Here's the one thing I can tell you about the Bay Area is though, they drive their Teslas during the week, and then they drive their Range Rovers on the weekends.
Oh, okay.
The McLarens on the weekends. So some of it is virtue singling, as they like to do out there in California quite a bit. But there is a market. It just depends on how many people are accepting it and are willing to deal with having an EV and knowing that you have to plan your day out a little bit differently. I have an EV. I've had 2 EVs in a row. We've had 2 Audi e-trons in a row. I had the original e-tron, and I also had the Sportback. Are they your only
vehicle, Geno?
No, but I have another vehicle. But primarily all I do is drive. And when I say I have another vehicle, my wife has another vehicle. It's not, I don't have a separate vehicle to do other things on, right?
Now, Jim, I'm going to call pineapple. You're not supposed to put that stuff on the screen.
No, if they say it, I'll put it up.
Okay. But I want to add on, I do definitely think it's demographic, but it's not regional. It goes back to what we're talking about, want buyers versus need buyers. What we're talking about are people who buy what they want. They can afford to have multiple vehicles, or they can afford to invest $70,000.
That's what I was trying to say a minute ago, Jen.
As Geno said.
I live in a neighborhood of multimillionaires, and I'm not one of those people, but I live where the help lives on the other end of the complex. But it's all gated community, and 1/3 of the cars in my neighborhood seem to be Teslas.
Let me say something here. I hear what you said, and I saw what you wrote on my post, and I take a little bit of an exception. I would be willing to put my neighborhood next to yours or anybody's.
Sure. I would imagine
there
you live on the other end where I don't live.
my friend had to tell me that he had one in his garage that he uses infrequently, but he hasn't. So I give you this. The iPhone was easy to use. The smartphone changed America. It was easy to access. I had somebody on the same post compare this to buying cars or researching cars on the internet. How much money does it take to achieve a Wi-Fi signal in any state in the union or in any city? What I give to you is that, and I think all of this gets here over time. I'm not anti-electric car. I believe in it. I think it's a multi-generational thing or generational thing. But what I give to you is this: go to the Walmart in Gulfport, Mississippi, or Murfreesboro, Tennessee, for that matter, or in your city. Go to the Walmart parking lot and see the people there and talk to them and ask them, hey, can you have an electrician install a 280 kilowatt charger in your garage? Well, I don't have a garage. I live in the country. Okay, well, so my point is that while it's highly adaptive and used in Fremont, California, is that America at large? You know, go to Wisconsin.
We're trying to talk about the long range future of electric. Is this going to work, or are they going to totally phase out internal combustion engines? April?
Absolutely not. It's just not feasible. Do I think that electric vehicles will go from where they are today to having an increasing footprint out there? You know, for if they're 1 out of 10 now, do they become 2 or 3 out of 10? Possibly, if to one of the points they build them to scale where they can get the cost down, where people can have them. The infrastructure works for some people. For me, it's going to be really difficult because honestly, like I drive my car till it's on fumes, not because I don't realize I'm running out of gas, but because I literally don't want to stand at the gas station for 3 minutes and fill it. So I have that much patience. I don't know how I'm going to deal with saying, okay, I can't get to my next dealership because I got to sit here and wait for an hour because I got no more insurance. So that alone is but over and above that, there's no infrastructure. I'm sitting in here at Arizona today. It's 113 degrees, and they're saying, will you please turn up your thermostat so that we don't have to run out of energy? So that's
wait a second. What did you just say?
It's 113 degrees today, and every single news outlet is saying, will you please turn up your thermostat so that we don't have to have a brownout and run out of energy, right? So I don't see a shovel in the ground building another power plant right now for electricity that is actually going to fuel these cars. So even if you can get a charger in your garage, which by the way, you can't, going back to my days with Toyota and when Prius and hybrids first came out and the plug-in first came out, they said, before you go buying this vehicle, you need to check with SRP and APS and find out if you can even get one. Because if your neighbor already has one, you might not be able to, because only so many
your
people
grid can only handle so much.
Can have them, right? So if we don't have the power to power them, how are we going to have all of the vehicles transition to that? So we have an infrastructure.
California already doesn't have the power. They're already having brownouts and grid crashes.
California's not the only state. California, Arizona, Texas, we see this. Our grid infrastructure cannot support this. And while I definitely think that, like April said, we are going to see an increase in penetration of these units on the roads, but there is no way that we can switch America. Let's not talk about car dealers. Let's not talk about manufacturers. There is no way we can switch Americans over to EV and eliminate ICE by the deadlines that they've put in place.
Or ever.
No way.
Or ever.
No, I don't think
Listen,
it is.
I remember that one movie What was that one movie with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes where they had the one really awesome muscle car down in the sewer? Like maybe one, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let me, Max, you've been particularly
I
quiet.
know.
Okay. Max is the, he's the instigator. Max, come on. What do you got?
Oh, he's going to say something about one price. I feel it.
No. I want to make 2 points, right? I'll tell you first why I am categorically against electric cars, right? Because electric cars are a loophole to break franchise laws. I make a living working with franchise dealers, right? I don't want to be unemployed. So I am categorically against electric cars. That's point number one. Point number two is this. I will be for electric cars if the market decides that this is what American people want.
Exactly.
The
What we
market.
have is government interference. And I'll give you a really good example. If you go back, and I'm sure Jim and Matt will remember this. If you go back to 70s and 80s, we had the format wars between Betamax and VHS. Right?
Why did you single out me and Matt?
I ain't nowhere
Because
near
I'm not
your way down.
I remember it. I actually remember it.
Right? And at the end of the day, there was no government interference, and everybody thought that Betamax was it. It was a better engineering situation. It had better quality, right? But it could only record 1 hour, right? And American public decided that you cannot record a baseball game or a movie on an hour-long tape. And guess what? Maybe ICE is inferior in certain ways to electric cars, but this is what American public wants to drive, right? And if you eliminate government interference in the form of tax, incentives, nobody in their right mind will buy this car.
Geno, jump in on that.
I mean, I've had 2 of them in a row. Obviously I get a little bit better of a deal.
And you got a way to dispose of them.
That's
And
right.
I got a way to dispose of them, right? But I can tell you, when gas prices were $1.50, I was kicking myself. But when gas prices got up to $5, I was like laughing about it because then I finally actually looked okay. My lease is in the mid 5s for the car that I'm in. And so if I take the amount of money I'd spend in gas versus my lease payment, I'm basically driving around in an $80,000 automobile for in the 200s. So there is a mathematical equation that will kick in that makes sense for the consumer. Where that is, I don't know. Is it in the secondary market? The more that they sell of them, one of the things I think is a misnomer is that I think that you're going to see more, especially with the F-150, more folks that are in rural areas that are going to start learning how to use solar and wind and different things of that nature to generate their own power. Because I'm from Florida. I was born in Pensacola, not too far away from Louisiana, and not too far away from Gulfport, Mississippi. And I grew up in Davie, so I'm a country boy at heart. And I know country boys want to be self-sufficient. So the faster that they can become self-sufficient, and this is, I think, the biggest thing, the faster they can get to a 500-mile range vehicle, that's when the tipping point will occur. 200 miles, 300 miles, it gets really difficult. But at 500 miles, it's going to be hard for people to say, well, why don't I want to buy one? Especially.
Yeah, I definitely think that capability, and that goes to what Max was saying. And guys, this is, I don't know how I'm going to agree with Max on this, right?
No, please don't.
But in the capacity, so I think Geno's right. Once we get a 500-mile range, it's different. But I will tell you, the ability to generate your own power, while solar panels are not that expensive, the storage of that electricity for personal off the grid, trust me, I know, is cost prohibitive still for most of America. And I'll tell you, because it was funny, somebody said, what's it cost to get Wi-Fi? I was like, about $4,000 out in rural areas because I'm still waiting on mine. I had to drive in to Lafayette, Indiana today. And I will tell you what I thought was incredibly interesting and fitting. I had to rent this office because I live outside, 12 miles outside of town in a rural area where I can't even get high-speed internet right now, right? But what I thought was incredibly interesting, as I drove in, the city bus has 3 wind turbines in their bus depot. So they obviously have got some bus units that are EV, which makes sense. I mean, this is, Purdue College is here, so the demographic is a lot different than it would be just outside of it. But even at that 500-mile capacity, there are still going to be cost issues for the majority of America.
There's
And
one thing I want to get with this
Right.
broadcast that we're not addressing yet. What is the future of EVs? I mean, is there going to come a point where when it stalls out and they have reached saturation? There's got to be a saturation point when the public says we're sticking with EVs, we're sticking with ICE.
You see,
gotta
Jim,
be-
the problem is the government interference. We're not letting the market decide. With the government interference, for example, I'm in Spain now, right? On paper, there's a law that as of 2035, they will not be selling any ICE vehicles whatsoever.
Yeah, the European Union passed that law for all of Europe that
That's
by
right.
2035 there will be no internal combustion engine vehicles produced that are sold new
Correct.
in the European Union.
Yeah, but is there a provision? And again, of course, the life of any type of equipment, because the EU is always much further ahead of other places when it comes to carbon emissions. When I was in I spent time in 4 years in the petrochemical industry. So looking at standards there versus here in the United States, it's quite different. But the interference either way, I think, is going to create issues. And without those subsidies, can the average person even afford that? But I think Owen Moon had popped it up a little bit earlier in the show, saying that for dealers who are all on board, you're ignoring the detriment to one of your primary profit centers, which is your fixed ops department. So I would assume then with the EU deadline and guidelines, then the shops, there's going to need to be more independent shops, more people to service those ICE vehicles for the folks that can't afford EV.
It's going to make being an independent dealer very attractive. Matt Bowers, jump in on that, please.
I mean, look, I think Western Europe was always going to be the earliest adopter. They don't have the natural resources we do. Culturally, it's hard to compare Western Europe or mandates or rules that are done in France to stuff that's done in Oklahoma or Ohio. They don't even play football there. Like, how's that going to go?
Different kind of football.
It's a totally
Different kind of
different.
football.
It's a totally different thing.
They wear
And
little shorts and kick a ball, quit it.
right. It's not the same. It's not the same. And so I think that, the issue with electric cars currently are a couple of things. Yes, it's getting pushed down people's throats, and that's an issue for some people, but practically it's a bigger issue. So somebody commented, hey, we have garages in Gulfport. Look, I love Gulfport. I have car dealerships there. It's one of my favorite places. But forget about Gulfport. You can pick any town in the Mid-South that you want to, even the most progressive ones. There's just a systemic lack of infrastructure that's going to be harder to cure than what we're talking about here. Not until you can charge a car in the same length of time with the same amount of ease that you could fill up a vehicle with gas, people will pay more for that convenience. People have proven that over and over and over again. It's also a thing where we have natural resources, and there's other people that are still shoveling coal into fire today, at a rate that's more than ever before. So I personally believe there may be some other things that come around that make this less right now. Look, I won't out any of my OEM friends. And it's also one of those topics that, the guys I know that work in, let's say public settings, it's one of those things you can't really say what you really think, because if you do that, then you're not progressive and you're not forward thinking. Look, Toyota had an article written about them in Barron's, I want to say, really slamming them for not being progressive. And really all they said was, hey, we're going to take the technology as it becomes available, and we're going to meet the consumers where they want to be met in the marketplace. And that's what I believe is going to
That's
happen
good business.
from a practical reality. I think it's just a longer shifting thing that we're all going to be dealing with. I don't think one of the OEMs told me this, and I ain't going to say who it was. They said that roughly they have 5% right now of the capacity to build 30% market share of electric vehicles in North America by 2030.
Explain that again. Dumb that down just a little bit.
If they wanted to achieve 30% market share, so 30% production, not market share, pardon me. So if you're selling 1,000 cars, they're going to sell 300 electric cars. And now this is a mainline car manufacturer. Currently today, they have 5% of the availability, resources, and capacity to build just 30% of what they're selling now by 2030. So what happens? I mean, look, I'm a Ford dealer, I'm a Chrysler Jeep dealer, I'm a Chevrolet dealer. I hate to say this on camera, but do you know how many Jeep Wranglers I've sold because of the Ford Bronco? A lot.
Who wrote that in an article? Absolutely.
My friends call me up and they say, hey, look, I want one of these Broncos. It looks awesome. I say, okay, great. You got to order it.
Wait a year.
It's a 7 or 8 month process. They're deflated. And then I said, hey, have you ever seen a Wrangler like a Sahara? No, those are awesome. Do you have one of those? And then they buy it that day.
Yeah.
That's America, though, Jim. Like
I said in my article that Stellantis, if they're smart, will produce inventory, and the Bronco and even the Tahoe. I mean, you look at they just come up with the new Wagoneer. I mean, there's gonna be a hard price to pay, but I think Stellantis is going to be equally stupid and follow some of the same things that other manufacturers are doing. And Max said earlier, and David Blasingame, one of the premier dealers, he's retired recently, but he's still consulting. One of the premier dealers in Texas, big volume dealer. Are the manufacturers using EVs as a means to eliminate and go around the franchise laws because Tesla's already won the court battles for electric? That's a question Max brought up. Is this a way to get around the franchise laws? And
well, 100% it is, but they won't say the quiet part out loud. I mean, I feel like everybody else does nowadays. Why can't they?
Well, that's been my forte over the last 35 years, 48 years. Is I can say things that the manufacturers won't hear from the dealers. I can say it.
I have to tell you, to Max's point, I think at the end of the day, everyone needs to be fighting against this, and the OEMs included. Nobody's going to be able to afford to buy their cars if they destroy our economy. If the franchise dealer goes away, all those jobs go away. But not just those jobs, every single one of the agencies who support the dealerships, you all go away as well. How many millions of jobs does the franchise automotive dealership body employ in this country? And if they shut that down, how many people can afford to buy their car? I mean, just
I was discussing with Geno the other day the wisdom of Volkswagen.
I will just say, as someone who was in retail operations in mid-Michigan during the last recession, and in Saginaw, Michigan specifically, when we saw so many plants, it was 30% of our population was employed at those plants. And I will tell you, it was bleak times. And it was very, very difficult. But ultimately, outside of, are they using this as a red herring to skirt the franchise laws? I mean, you have to then also talk about the fact that the initiative is so that we can be more environmentally friendly. But is electric really that much more environmentally friendly?
Where are we going to get the rare? Okay, let's talk about this. Where are we going to get the rare earths, and where are we going to get all of the exotic materials that it takes to maintain, and battery disposal? Is Tesla going to launch batteries into space and burn them up in the sun? I mean, where are we gonna dispose of all this? Geno, jump in there.
I mean, it's not my job to figure out where they're going to dispose it or where they're going to find it. I was reading an article that said that Salton Sea in Southern California has enough lithium to provide, vehicles to us in mass-produced amount.
But we're not allowed to mine them.
Well, they're going to start mining it,
politics
actually.
again.
Yeah, there's politics, of course. But for me, like when I get and I don't know about you, Matt, but when I get a pre-owned Tesla, they don't last that long on the lot. At least we have a store in Lakeland, Florida, and one of my buyers paid MSRP for a little bit more than MSRP for a Model X, and I was like, what? Why did you just do that? And then 30 days later, it sold for $5,000 more than what we paid for it. That's what I concern myself with, right? The market, to Max's point, the market is going to be what dictates what customers want, like how long the cars sit on the lot. And that's what the manufacturers are going to build. If they build cars that people want, then they're going to sell a bunch of them. If they build cars that people don't want for one reason or the other, then they're not going to sell a bunch of them. I will tell you they're putting a competitive advantage in technology in all of their EV vehicles. Now, I saw at NADA, I saw the new F-150.
Is that purposeful?
That's definitely purposeful, because that new F-150, I've had a frunk for the last 2 years in my Audi, but it ain't like that frunk that's in the F-150. And once you see that frunk in the F-150, man, it's like changes your mindset of like, man, that's some extra space and what a pickup truck could have, and being able to use it to hold sodas in it at the ball game, or to be able to plug in and do some work with a light above you overhead. That's some pretty cool stuff. They're not putting that in the previous F-150. They can't put it in the previous F-150. So yeah, there's some purpose behind what they're putting in the technology. The stores that I'm at today, the Alfa Romeo Maserati stores, they're leaning in full go on electrification as well. They want to be at Alfa Romeo 2027. They want to be completely electric. Do I think they're going to get there? Probably not. But if they get there by 2030, that would be kind of in line to what they're doing in Europe. A lot of our vehicles are European. Volkswagen is one of our stores, and Audi as well.
Wait a minute. Volkswagen is going to the agency model.
They want to go. So here's what we were talking about before when we talked about just generalization about Volkswagen, and not Volkswagen in particular, but any OEM. Us dealers are going to be the ones that are going to be here to pick up the pieces when they fall on their face. I talked about this before. I had a dog named Ginger, and she was a blue heeler, and she used to chase after the cars when they would go through the front yard in Davie on our dirt road. And she'd go after them all the time, and I'd be like, damn, I hope she don't catch one of them. And I think for us, the direct-to-consumer thing for a lot of these manufacturers is they might be like Ginger and bite down on that wheel. And biting down on a mouthful of tire, that hurts. And what's going to happen is when they don't build the most exciting products that everybody wants to have, and they don't have a way to deliver it to them as fast as they possibly can, then us, the dealers, are going to be the ones that have to pick up the pieces. So I think the leverage in their mind right now is because of supply chain issues, because they have the cars and we don't. They think they have the leverage, but I think, and this is just my opinion, I've been doing this for a couple cups of coffee, 20 plus years. I've seen the ebbs and flows when the manufacturer needed us, and I think we're going into those waters right now. I think the manufacturer is going to need us real soon. So
yeah, Matt, jump in on that conversation. The agency model, is it to go hand in hand with electric vehicles?
I mean, I think that's the idea. I think that, again, the practical reality of it is very difficult. I'm not nearly as old as Jim. However, I am old enough to remember when Ford bought a bunch of stores in the Midwest. And I think if you go, I shared an office with a guy that was a very high level executive in the automobile manufacturing business. And he told me about the dealer network and about market share. They made great vehicles where he worked at, and then they put it within 25 miles of every consumer in America. So if you had a great idea, you could get it out quickly. or if you made a mistake, you could fix it quickly. And I think that dealing with consumers is completely different in real life than what it is theoretically in an office. So I just think there's a lot of logistical issues. I mean, look, Tesla gets every benefit of the doubt in the world, and they're not in. I mean, where I'm at, there's not a Tesla dealership here or a Tesla outlet or wherever else. So they're not dealing nearly with the scale and size and production. My money's still on the legacy car manufacturers. I think they have all of these built-in advantages. And I think one of their main advantages, I mean, think about Chrysler, like all of the people that wanted to buy Chrysler over the years. Why? Because they had great manufacturing facilities? No. Because they had a huge dealer network all over the United States of America, which is the biggest car market in the world.
And they were some of the best dealers in the country. If you could sell a Chrysler, you could sell anything in the 70s.
The only thing that hey Jim, the only thing that concerns me is I get the cross-sell reports on IHG, and a lot of this electrification will, a lot of trends start up high and then they work their way down. Lakeland, Florida, 16% market share is Tesla. They don't have a Tesla kiosk at the mall you have to go all the way to Tampa. It's an hour drive to Tampa. It's an hour drive to Orlando. So sometimes I think, there is some connectivity that they can do. Now the legacy guys, I don't think they'll have the same ability because they're not completely vertically integrated. They think that they can do this clickbait stuff with the Scout and with, what Farley. You love Farley, and I know you love ripping on Farley, but wasn't Farley the guy that tried to change automotive in Scion?
Yeah. Matter of fact, I met him when I was writing for Dealer Magazine, and I was going across the internet, and I found out the hemp festival, the marijuana festival in Oregon, was sponsored by Scion, and I published it in the magazine. And of course the Southern Coalition came after Toyota, and Jim Press jumped all over Farley and said, "What the hell are you doing? Ziegler's on us." I mean,
well, here's the problem with legacy manufacturers.
Yeah.
Is they have these supplier chains, right? Where Elon decides he's got 100 million Twitter followers. He doesn't have to spend any money on advertising, right? He literally can say, "I want to get rid of the X model or whatever model that he wants to get rid of because it's not selling." Well, these legacy manufacturers, they got to keep building the Chevy Malibus. They got to keep building the Oldsmobile Cutlasses. They got to keep building the Pontiac Grand Prix. I was at a Pontiac dealership, and I knew it was over for them when they came out with the G8, and it was a beautiful car. It was a Holden, and we were like, "Oh, we're so excited about the car!" And it landed at the dealership, and it came with a $1,500 rebate from the get, and I'm like, "Uh-oh." So I've seen the mistakes that have happened with legacy manufacturers.
I was with Potemkin Cadillac when they came out with the Cadillac Cimarron, which was a I don't know if everybody remembers all that, but yeah. So
that's part of the problem for the legacy. So again, that's just another component of them trying to go to direct to consumer, but they still have all these fiefdoms in their process that will almost make it impossible for them to do it.
Is electric car production, I'm going to ask that question again, is electric car production leverage to get into the agency model? Max?
So the answer is yes, right? Because Tesla set the precedent. The problem is that there's a huge difference between Elon Musk, Tesla, and legacy manufacturers. Elon Musk is one in a century individual. He's the Henry Ford of the 21st century. Right, and neither GM, nor Ford, nor Toyota, nor any other manufacturer can say that they have an Elon Musk caliber CEO working for them. And the chances of them hiring an Elon Musk CEO are slim to none. Right, because these are God-given gifts, right, that happen very rarely. Second point I want to make is that, you see, for the last 100 years, legacy manufacturers invested gazillions of dollars into engineering an ICE automobile, right? And if you look at what they make now, they're pretty awesome, in terms of fuel efficiency. So even if gas is $5 a gallon, guys, when you get a Honda Civic that gets you 42 miles a gallon, you're going to be okay, right? And of course, again, I think dealers are being naive, thinking that franchise laws are not under attack, right? Because once they separate electric from ICE, that's step number one, and that's based on Elon Musk's precedent. But what's the step number two? The step number two is to say, listen, we're going to make ICE vehicles direct to consumer as well. And then what are you going to do in your franchise dealership? You're going to hope for service? I doubt it's going to happen.
Now, the Right to Repair Act is going to open up.
That's
the
right.
Right to Repair Act is going national, where independent shops can do warranty work and be paid by the manufacturer for independent warranty work. So they're going to have to release all of that. So that if the Right to Repair Act is already in legislation all over the country, and Biden signed it last July, a year ago. So the Right to Repair Act is going to happen where service can go to any shop that elects to do factory warranty work.
Yeah, but do you know how expensive it is to put in the right EV shop? Like, it's not
for the manufacturer.
The little
If they
independents
run the
aren't going to be
shop.
able to handle it.
No, I think we're talking about EV and ICE in general. That's a whole nother topic, Jim. You're going to make my eyes start twitching, bringing up the Right to Repair. Like,
Yeah, he loves that one.
Right to Repair Act is a big deal. It's a big
It
deal.
is a big
Yeah,
deal.
no,
The
but
dealers aren't
also-
even paying attention to Right to Repair Act. They're too busy focusing on the agency model that they don't even think about the Right to Repair Act and will take the service business.
It's the 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
Well, it's where the manufacturer then says, hey, we'll come in and subsidize the people we want to allow to now do the warranty work on our vehicles. It's ultimately all of these red flags, whether you're talking about Right to Repair, you're talking about the new FTC proposed guidelines, you're talking about going EV. And I'm sorry, my personal opinion on this is if it was all about carbon footprint only, then we would be talking hybrids. We wouldn't be talking EV. Because ultimately hybrids all the way around are actually going to be a better carbon footprint than a full electric vehicle. That's statistically been proven. Now, maybe 20 years from now, that won't be the case. But right now, today, if we're talking about carbon, hybrid would be the way to go. Well, why would they not go hybrid then? Why are we going full electric? I don't believe in coincidences. And to me, there's too many of these little things all over the place that shows what the end game intent really is. And we just need to be aware of them.
Absolutely. Jennifer, jump in there.
Well, I was just thinking with how April phrased it, the intent. I was like, if Google is shifting all of this stuff for audience and intent to really have an understanding with, making our ads and things more efficient, I think what April is saying, and it's so funny, we talk about seeing the red flags and we always see them way too late, right? Because we're in the trenches of this all. But I mean, I'm still flustered about the Right to Repair because, of course, that's supposed to take care of all of my expenses. And if you let Jiffy Lube work on my brand new vehicles and subsidize them. So anyhow, the intent is, right, they see, and I've got to keep going back to when we talk about Tesla and this EV and breaking the franchise and no franchise model, ultimately, the average American, and I know their prices are getting better, but the average American is not that type of shopper, right? They don't have that type of budget.
The average car today is $38,000.
For a base.
$38,000 is the average amount financed.
Right. So let's think about it. What do we see happening with American households right now, the working class? What do we see with their expendable income? I don't see that growing right now.
We're not building these cars for them.
Well, but if your largest segment of your consumer base doesn't even want or can afford, they might want it maybe, but they're a need buyer because they need to go to work to pay their rent and feed their kids. I get it. That's not their target. But what April was talking about is intent. And now I'm bringing the audience into it. in businesses where you ignore consumer demand, and I can't believe, again, coming back to Max over here and agreeing about making, you have to be able to provide the consumers with what they want. Let the market decide.
You agree with
Not
Max again? Oh my God. Okay.
this, I'm
Oh.
telling you, I feel like I'm always standing up for the little guy.
Everybody
here.
doesn't live in a country club community like Matt Bowers,
No.
Jim Ziegler, probably Geno Walsh.
No,
You
not
know,
me.
I mean, yeah.
I have a good
we're not-
segment
we're-
mix.
We are not the average consumer.
No, and I have a good segment mix. I have the Jaguar Land Rover stores that I work with, but I also have independents and Hondas and Toyotas and things like that. Kia. So it's a nice mix, and I'd like to think as I look at this.
Kia makes a really nice EV, by the way.
Kia is also one of the most dealer-friendly manufacturers of the bunch. If I had to say dealer-friendly,
they
dealer-unfriendly, I would still put Nissan as one of the most dealer-unfriendly. I would put, but they're coming back. Nissan is starting to have a renaissance.
Yeah, a little better.
Yeah, they
Till they build some cars.
Yeah, no, they're starting to be more dealer friendly, but they weren't at one point. But Kia is the most dealer friendly, in my opinion, franchise.
For sure, but what about consumers? What about the people who are signing these contracts? Come on, I get it. Those of us
84
on the
months.
show. Now that's definitely not the best way to buy a car, but okay.
Yeah, but they're doing it like they're doing it.
I
I've
know.
never seen so many before. Everybody's doing 84 months. Everybody is. We used to pencil things at 36 months and 48 months.
I used to come off the desk at 36 months.
Yeah.
Matt Bowers and I crossed paths at Don Bone Ford in New Orleans. I mean, the biggest Ford dealer in the state at the time, and I personally had a lot to do with that. And it was
Not
amazing.
electric car country either, by the way.
No, we'd come off the desk at 36 months, and you were forbidden to come off the desk at 48 or 60. Now today, the first pencil out of the CRM is 84 months.
They're coming in with that though. The customers are even coming in with that.
Am I the only one who's scared that of the amount of repossessions that we're lining ourselves up?
Credit is severely damaged as a result of COVID and other economic factors. Credit delinquency is at record since the 70s. So once again, when the manufacturers go to their agency model, how are they going to handle the distressed credit people that we have to work with? And Matt, you live in New Orleans and you've got some distressed credit in your neighborhood.
Why do you keep picking on me, man? I'm also in Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. But I don't think that any of these markets are anything different than any, that's America. That's like
No, it's America. It is America. Absolutely.
And I'm hearing the panel talk and I'm thinking to myself, like the guys that go to North Mississippi, okay, which there's millions of people that live, north of Jackson, Mississippi.
Casino country.
I don't know. Go knock on doors and say, hey, do you deer hunt? Do you deer hunt? Eight out of 10, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know any of these guys that are looking to make their own electricity out of wind. You know what I mean? Like, how are they going to take their car and go to the deer camp on the river and then stay there? But you're laughing. This is real thing.
True.
Now, I listen. I met a guy who was a billionaire up in New York some years ago, and he said, "Look, cars are done." And he was telling me about Carvana, and he's like, "Look, I bought my son. I put it in a machine. They bring it to my house." And I said, "You also take a helicopter from Connecticut to Manhattan every day."
Right.
Okay, like you're not in touch with the reality of this. I think you have a hard time as an American citizen right now getting a refrigerator delivered to your home or somebody to come and fix it. How are you going to? I listened to the CFO at General Motors. He drove a Hummer. He said, "Look, I wanted to feel the anxiety the consumer felt." So I picked my daughter up from college and I brought her home. And look, it was fine. We drove for about an hour and a half, and then we stopped and had a little bite to eat for about 30 minutes and plugged up to a fast charging station. And then we drove a little further, and then we stopped. We were about ready to stretch our legs. And I'm thinking, What if it had been me and my wife and my 2 little boys driving to Florida for 7 hours, and I got to stop every hour and a half or 2 hours? Who else is stopping too? Are 100 people at the charging station or 1,000 people? Like, how does that trip work? And it's just not there yet. At some point it will be, but not yet. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, Maud, find that charging station. Well, let me get them on my cell phone.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Oh, Geno, you're dying to say something. Jump in.
No, I mean, he's accurate in saying that it's not there yet, but we could do this panel 10 years from now. We'll probably be talking about some other new way.
That's why you're here, Geno. That's why you're here. I didn't want a bunch of people all agreeing with each other. I mean,
no, well, I'm the only one here that actually has an EV and plugs in at home. So
No, I have a hybrid, not an EV,
Yeah,
and
so-
an F-150 and a Navigator.
and the guy across the street from me bought a Kia, which was a plug-in hybrid. So he's got the gas and that, but he got a charging station on the outside of his house. I don't live in a country club, right? But
oh yeah,
I
you do. Yeah, you do. Come on.
No,
man.
I don't like golf. I can tell you that. Golf.
feel like-
I don't play golf. I don't know how to play golf.
Golf is a good walk ruined. I learned that a long time ago. I could only get through 9 holes because that's how many beers I could have. But I see it more so happening like in a market like Lakeland, which is not a very metropolitan market. And it's been a lot of work just to get the Audis sold there. And I can see it in the market where I do see the Teslas that are there. And I think you have a better shot actually in suburban neighborhoods than you do in urban neighborhoods for the electric vehicles, because people can put those charging stations in. And so my house has a charging station now. If I move from South Florida to Tampa or St. Pete, I'm not bringing that charging
Do
station
you
with
think
me.
that's because you're in the business or because you're electric aficionado?
Well, the guy across the street from me works for City Furniture, who put his charging station on his
Okay.
house. So he's
What
he's
if
not
you
in
rent
the
it?
business.
That's fair.
What's that?
What if
I
you
say
rent
that's
it?
fair. But now, we're talking
But it
about
goes
Well,
back to
It's a selling feature though in my
demographic.
house now, right?
We're
It's a
talking
selling
about
feature
it.
in my house.
a number of issues here, and the issues are, the age is this. Max said that this is a trick to get into the agency model and to bust the franchise laws.
But guys, I also want to make another point, right?
Is
Even
it a
though
trick?
they-
It's always a trick, though, right? Like they're always trying to get into our shorts. They've been doing it since they told us that we had to have the, specific showrooms, and we had to have CSI, and we had to make sure that we, our email templates had to have the specific thing on it. And when we did it advertising on the radio, we had to have it this exact way. Otherwise, we weren't going to get any co-op. This is just the next level of them trying to get into our shorts. But at the end of the day, when this thing crashes, like it did back in 2008, 2009, when they were on their knees, who did they come to get? They came to get us. We're the ones that transferred
Joe Eberhard at Jaguar Land Rover last week made an announcement that they sort of walked it back a little bit. That, hey, we're going to totally do away with our dealers. We're going to totally go to the agency model. No dealers whatsoever. I mean,
Jim,
it
you
was
were
like-
there. Could you imagine? Hey, Jim, you were there. You remember Cash for Clunkers? Remember that wonderful thing?
Cash for Clunkers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Joe Eberhard and the rest of the folks that are out there that are work for these manufacturers who can't even answer an email on a Saturday, handling Cash for Clunkers or any of the nonsense that comes out there? I mean, they're not equipped. We're barely equipped right now. I don't know about Matt, but it's hard to find good people, whether they're technicians, whether they're salespeople, finance managers, whatever it is, it's hard to find. So you're going to just take all that and give it back to the manufacturer just because they're going to sell EV cars? I just don't see it yet. I don't see it.
But they do. That's the point. They do. They're going to crash. They're going to crash hard.
Jim, I
I'm
want
not-
to make one point that I just thought
Make
of,
it,
right?
Max. Make it.
So for the last 100 years, right, we've been producing, internal combustion engines, and there are thousands, if not millions, of patents, right? So to say no more, right, this is just an engineering suicide, right? And even though we've been making ICE vehicles for 100 years, right, how come Ford stands for found on the road dead, right? How come Kia stands for killed in action? right? And this is ICE. And you mean to tell me that these people are going to produce a quality electric vehicle? I mean, they can barely make an ICE vehicle, guys. That's point number one. Point number two is reliability, right? I mean, the range anxiety is real, right? Whether it's 200 or 500, right? Even if it's 700, where are you going to charge it, right? So reliability in terms of range anxiety is real. And when it comes to sustainable energy, right? Whether it's wind, solar, this is all a fantasy, right? And here's the ultimate test, right? If God forbid 6 of us have to get on a life support right now, would you want that life support to be powered by electricity, wind, or solar?
Well, it's all electricity, Cole. It's all electricity. It just depends on. So you mean coal, wind, or solar is what
I'm
you
trying to picture wind. Does the car have a sail?
I guarantee you that all 6 of us are going to say, plug me into this jack right now. Forget solar.
But it all feeds the jack, Max. It's just that the infrastructure now that feeds those jacks in this country is primarily coal.
I live in Arizona. I might go with solar. I'm just going to say.
I'm in Indiana.
If you were in Tennessee, it'd be all turbines, right? It'd be all from the water, the TVA, right? So there's different ways in which nuclear is definitely going to have to fit in there if they want to start powering all these cars.
If we really wanted to reduce the carbon footprint, Geno, that is the only solution outside of water and nuclear, because wind doesn't, coal doesn't. And I mean, solar, again, from an individual household standpoint, it's not realistic from a cost perspective. So the fact that we're just ignoring the majority of Americans in this conversation, not us, of course, in the conversation, but you have to think about that audience. It's just ridiculous to me that we're setting deadlines and targets without actually being ready.
Well, the biggest question I have, if I visit New Orleans, Matt, is there a good Cajun restaurant there you could recommend?
A good what?
Cajun restaurant or Creole restaurant that
Yeah, we that's one thing we do very well here, is we can cook, and I'd like to say one last thing about this, is that I think the world is moving this way anyway. So I'm not sitting here being a denier of electric vehicles, and not at all. I think it's moving that way anyway. I think it's being sped up for other reasons. I think Ford is in a hurry to do this, not because of, I think it's being sped up, and, I think that's liable to change. And I think people draw a line at some point as to what's important to Americans, and, agendas that were important in one administration and are accepted broadly last. So if Americans accept this broadly, it will last, and it'll be fast. If it's less accepted, it'll still get there. It'll just be slower. That's just my own opinion.
Well said.
That is a well said opinion. Okay, Geno, what closing statements? We got 3 minutes. Take a minute of it.
Well, I would think the best thing to make sure that you don't get disrupted and that the manufacturer comes in and takes your customers is to disrupt yourself on a constant basis. So if you're not trying to go where your customer wants to be met, and we call it the Qvale way here, because we want to meet our customer wherever they want to be met, whether it's an ICE car, it's an EV car, whether it's a service opportunity, you meet them where they want to be met. If it's at their house, if it's here at the dealership, or if it's at their kid's soccer game, or at
nobody
their place
disagrees with that. No,
yeah,
I think everybody in this broadcast agrees with that.
But that's what I think we need to do in order for us to insulate ourselves or to future-proof ourselves from the manufacturers coming and taking our customer base, right?
Well, the manufacturers are dead set with an agenda. The manufacturers have an agenda.
They don't have that connectivity to the market. Like Matt, I guarantee you, Matt has a great connection to the market. If he's like us, he's donating his time, he's donating money to local charities and being involved in this.
Power is one of the most reputable dealers in the country.
That's what I mean. So like I can guarantee you, Elon Musk has never showed up to any one of these soccer games, and he's never been to any one of these kids' Toys for Tots things. He hasn't done any of that kind of stuff, and that's what if we keep our head in the sand and not try to progress and not try to meet customers where they want to be met, then we'll lose that competitive advantage of being in the community, right?
When I was on 60 Minutes 15 years ago, and they were prosecuting a dealer in Tennessee, and it was one of the big public companies. And I said, look, wait a second. Most dealers are emotionally and historically involved and invested in their communities. I said that on 60 Minutes. Most dealers are emotionally, historically, and involved with their communities. Not just the soccer teams, the charities, the hospitals. I mean, dealers are not mercenaries that some of the publics were bringing in at the time. And I referred to them on 60 Minutes as mercenary managers, you know, which got me a lot of endearment. Well, Wayne Zanga didn't like that. But anyway,
So
okay,
that's how-
guys,
yeah.
we burned an hour. Matt, thank you for being here. Really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Okay. Dawg Pounders, Geno Walsh, stick around. We'll have a little conversation. We're about to get off. Wave goodbye to the audience.